Hi, I'm Rachel Hanna, a registered dietitian and elite marathon runner. I'm here to talk about some nutrition strategies that you can use, not only for your, half marathon, marathon training, but just in general to stay healthy, and especially as you build, for the TCS Toronto Marathon this fall. So I work one-on-one with clients doing fuel plans, fuel strategies, just to help with this exact thing. So I'm going to offer you some tips and strategies, but I would encourage one-on-one support if you are struggling with anything from, gut health issues, low energy, low iron, anything that working one-on-one can help with. I often look a lot at also carb intake related to energy levels. That can make a big difference, not only in your health, but your performance. So I can share my website's rachelhannahRD.com or rachelhannahRD@gmail.com if you do have any further questions to what I am going to talk about here and offer some strategies. So yeah, let's get into it. So if we think about, fueling, building right now, for say 5, 6 weeks out from the race, you're doing a lot of, high intensity training right now. I'm going to focus mostly on the half marathon, marathons, talking more about carbs needed during training and racing. So right now you do want to be practicing with what you're going to be using come race day. So you want to be, training your gut, using the products that you're going to use on course. So you want to think, okay, are you going to, grab fluids on course? Are you going to use, I believe it's noon hydration that's going to be offered. So can you practice with that in your handheld, your vest while you're training, your bottles, whatever you happen to be using? So fluids come first, kind of figuring out, how much you're going to take per hour. I would try to practice that on your runs now that the weather isn't quite as hot. It's a little bit more reasonable, but fluid line guidelines can really vary depending on the person, the temperature, the intensity, the humidity, all those factors determine that. So in general, if we aim for, say, anywhere from, 4 to 500, 600 mils an hour, that would be the very average range that I'd give for people. So you want to just think about that in when you're fueling right now and make sure you're not getting dehydrated. Electrolytes are in most sports drinks. Some are in gels. We don't despite, popular ideas on, at least from the sports nutrition companies selling you, very high sodium intake. It's really not needed. The body's quite good at, regulating sodium levels. So we usually get rid of what we don't need. We can conserve what's needed. So if it's under, say, 4 or 5 hours, not too extreme in temperature, just a little bit of sodium per hour is perfectly fine. When people run into issues is usually if they're drinking way too much water and overhydrating, then you can run into low sodium levels. But for the most part, because our diets are so high in sodium, we're quite good there. So just have a little bit in your products, and you don't have to worry too much about that. I get asked a lot about cramping in this exact topic, and cramping can be related to a lot of things. Sometimes it's pacing, muscle strain. Usually it's not related too much to sodium intake, especially if it's just in one area of the body. It'd be kind of whole body cramping you'd be experiencing. So that's usually not the cause, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't hydrate well and shouldn't pay attention to that. And then the other important part is obviously carbohydrates. So once our body is running at high intensity, long duration, we start to run out of, glycogen. So that kind of feeling when you're sort of hitting the wall, you're feeling like really low energy. One of the goals in endurance running is to fight off fatigue as long as we can. So we're trying to reduce that by keeping carb intake high. So the amount that you're going to take in really depends on, like I was saying, time and intensity. So the harder you're going, the longer, that's where you want to focus on a higher amount. So say, for example, I usually give targets based on, what pace you're running. So if we go for, say, marathon, for example, if we're running, say, a 4 hour marathon, if we're doing, 40 to 45 grams of carbs an hour, that should be good. And then as the speed is progressing, we're getting more carbs per hour. So most people will probably be in that range of at least like 45, 50 to 60, 65 grams of carbs an hour. So you're hearing me talking carbs per hour. So you want to figure out on your run if you're going out for, say, 3 hours, how much carbs are you taking with you? How much are you getting from, if you're using a sports drink, a gel? So try to add those up ahead of time and divide it by the amount of time that you're running for. Because that's really important as your runs progress to just keep, your muscles well fueled, so you're going to recover better from it, get a better quality session if you're taking in enough, and then it's less surprise come race day because you've trained with that, so your stomach can tolerate that. Often people run into gut issues if they're like not taking in enough and then they take in way too much race day. So the gut training is part of it, just like you train your muscles. So I'd encourage you to use the products you're going to use too in race day. Some people will use different ones just to maybe save a little bit of money, but I would use the products you're going to use just so you know exactly what to expect. So most products are going to contain glucose and fructose mix, so those are the quickest digesting carbs. That's what I would look for in the sports product you're using. So a combination of that. That's really going to help to get you a higher carb amount. The body can use that quicker for energy, especially glucose. That's the fastest one to break down. You'll see that as glucose, maltodextrin, things like that on the label. Um, if we're thinking about, products like Morton Hydrogel, so say the gel sports drink, the reason why, it does cost a little bit more is that it's a hydrogel technology, so it is leaving the stomach at a faster rate. So basically, it's helping to digest faster. It's not sitting in your stomach as long, so less risk of GI issues, especially if you're going above 60 grams of carbs an hour. So that's why that hydrogel works really well in that sense. But yeah, it's coming down to what you prefer, the taste, flavor of what you can tolerate. So again, just practice before race day. So that's a lot of it. The training amounts during. Like I mentioned, if you have more specific questions, you can book things one-on-one for that. And then just make sure around your runs you're fueling really well. So before and after. So if we're looking at, any workouts or so high intensity sessions, long duration, you want to get at least like 1 to 2 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight before. So say you're heading out the door and you're 60 kilograms, make sure you're getting that with your breakfast meal if it is a long run or a workout. So you can basically take the foods you're eating, add up those amounts. There's lots of apps out there. I use one called RX Foods with People or Hexus. There's two different ones that I use just to help with that, and I follow that as well before my long efforts because it does make a difference with just energy levels. The same goes for recovery, so trying to make sure you get that amount, and then you want to combine protein with that afterwards, just for muscle repair, recovery that way. So if you can get at least sort of 20 to 30 grams or zero point 0.4 grams per kilogram of body weight afterwards, that's really great. And plus a high amount of carbs too. So you just want to make sure you're almost taking in the same amount you did before, just for proper recovery. Ideally within an hour if you can, for those higher intensity sessions as well. Yeah, so that should help in terms of the training components of it. And then day to day, looking at closer, like I mentioned, carb intake and making sure, you're going higher overall in general. So if you're doing it around the sessions, that's really going to help. And then the other days that you're not doing as much, that's where like eating a higher fiber amount, some more fruits, vegetables, just things that have less carbs and more nutrients that way can be really helpful, just to make sure that you're balancing out that extra energy needed during. So yeah, so those are some things to keep in mind just for general fueling strategies. And again, gut issues, I think a lot of it can be solved by like practicing what you're using, monitoring fiber intake. So just keeping that, low the day before, tracking it if you need to, because often we can run into gut issues if we're having too much dietary fiber, especially like right before the longer runs or workouts. So tapering that bit down a little bit can be helpful. Some people find using, lower FODMAP type foods. That's just a sort of fancy word for different types of carbs that digest differently in our guts. So having a lower amount can be helpful. You can look up lists of what things are high and low if you're having any stomach problems. But yeah, I would encourage to reach out if you do need help with that. Yeah, those are kind of the main things to think about. Like carbs, protein, those are the main factors. And then right before the race to a carb load for 2 days is really beneficial. So anywhere, I'd say the average would be, 8 or 9 grams per kilogram of body weight you're carb loading with. So that's a lot if you do the math on the amounts. That could be, high 300s, 400, 500 grams a day, depending how much you weigh. So tracking that's really helpful. Doing kind of mini carb loads before longer runs can also help so that you can get familiar with what foods to eat, what sits comfortably. If you can't tolerate that from more solid foods, you can use sports drinks and things like that too, just to top up. So The carb load, you don't need to do it for more than 2 days, but usually that helps us to get enough. And yeah, keep fat the low the night before. I personally try to cut out vegetables the day before marathon, so just keep it really low fiber, high carb, moderate protein, and yeah, that will help in terms of digestion. So I hope those things help. Just some little strategies here and there to like think about. But yeah, I'm here for any extra support you want to use. If you want to use a tracking app, just to get more details. If you're going through any things like injury, like I mentioned, low iron, looking into that in detail, getting blood work done, things like that. And yeah, I hope training goes well. It's very exciting to be able to line up for a race and just build through it successfully. So I wish you all the best with that and reach out again if you have questions. Rachel Hannah RD at gmail.com. That's also my Instagram name too, if that's easier. All right, thanks.